good to go now? All right. There we go again. All right. Yeah, no, really, no worries, Tim. It's totally fine. Thanks for organizing this event. I know it's always a lot of work. Um, yeah, so what are we doing at Centrifuge? So what we're trying to do is we're kind of trying to create a bridge to bring real world assets into DeFi, into decentralized finance. And what that means is kind of right now, crypto and DeFi, it's really its own world. DeFi projects are interacting with each other, but it's really um, all kind of interconnected, but not really connected to the broader real world financial system. And what we're trying to do is we're creating the technology infrastructure to actually be able to bring assets from the real world into DeFi and into the crypto space. And the way we do that is we have a product called TinLake that enables someone, a lending business, to tokenize their real world assets and then bundle them in a pool, in a kind of a liquidity pool, and then create liquidity LP tokens from this pool and move those LP tokens around in the DeFi ecosystem and find liquidity for them. That is a lot of different words and a lot of different keywords. So in the rest of my presentation, I'll go into the different bits that are involved there. But basically, on a very high level, that's it. We're creating the technology infrastructure to broaden the space of DeFi and include real world assets in it, which is an incredibly huge market that we're kind of able to tap into and we're able to grow the space too. Yes. So I wanted to start because this was a very high level interview. I wanted to start with kind of at the small beginning at the NFT level. So let's say you have a house. This is a nice house, I think somewhere in Florida. And let's say you want to take a loan against this house as collateral. Now, what we do is actually we kind of take some public information about this house, like what is the value of this house, and also some private data about this house or about the borrower of the loan, like what is the credit score of who's trying to borrow, what is the address of the house, and so on, like different sets of like public metadata that describes the asset and private metadata that describes maybe the asset, but also the borrower or the involved parties. And we bundle this information together into an NFT or a non-fungible token. This is what would be called tokenization. So it's basically creating an on-chain representation of some off-chain collateral. That's kind of the first step. So for every collateral that you want to kind of use on-chain, you'd create an NFT for it and do that. What we then also do is we, or any of our pools, create a legal entity in the real world, and what's called an SPV, that would kind of hold the legal rights to this off-chain collateral. And that's kind of where the off-chain part ends. And what we then want to do is actually we want to create a liquid marketplace for these real-world asset NFTs. And the way we do that is we have created an protocol. It's about 20 different Solidity smart contracts that are live right now on Ethereum mainnet, where a borrower can then lock this NFT into the pool, and they can bundle these different assets, these different NFTs together. So they on the one side, the issuer or the borrower deposits NFT and bundles them in a pool, and you get a bunch of different NFTs that are similar asset class or so together. And then what you can do using that pool is you can create different tranches. So this is a financial concept from the traditional finance space that's normally called securitization. So what you're doing here is really you're creating different risk classes for this pool of assets. So we call this drop and tin or the senior tranche and the junior tranche. You might be familiar with this maybe if you've used Barnbridge as well, or some other protocols that are doing similar things. Really what you're able to do here is you're creating LP tokens, so tokens that people can invest kind of part or like they can buy a share of this pool, but they're able to buy either a drop token or a tin token, and this depends on kind of the risk class that they're interested in investing in. So the drop token is kind of a more stable yield, but a lower risk level. And the TIN token is basically a higher yield but higher risk level as well. So really what's interesting here is that these TIN tokens are often very interesting for kind of individual investors or DeFi native investors that are really interested in a specific pool and want basically higher yield, but also want are able to kind of spend more time analyzing and figuring out how risky a certain asset is. And then drop tokens are very interesting for maybe larger institutional investors, or and that's where it gets really interesting for other DeFi protocols. So right now you have a bunch of different DeFi protocols, like for example MakerDAO, that has a large collateral base in different crypto collateral types. So MakerDAO is a large share of crypto of collateral in USDC, in ETH, and in other in different crypto tokens. But all of these crypto like collaterals are very highly correlated. What that means if there's potentially a crash or if there's volatile crypto market, then this will have a huge impact on kind of the stability of in this case DAI, but depends on the protocol. And so what they really want is they want stable collateral backing their token, and that's where kind of real world assets come in. So these drop tokens that I mentioned, which are the more stable, safe tokens in these pools, can be used for Maker as collateral. And that's what we've been working on for quite a while, and I'll get back to like in more details about it in a second. Before I get into that, I wanted to give a few examples of our product. So our product is already live. This has been running on Ethereum for about 1.5 years. Right now, we have about 45 million in TVL. And what it actually means is we have 45 million in loans that's been given to real world assets and actually been used for very clear use cases. So a few of our examples for our pools right now are Neil Silver. This is our biggest pool. So they are a US-based real estate provider. So they provide bridge loans for the real estate market in the US. They use technology to actually hand out these loans, and they use kind of our infrastructure and our protocol to get financing for these loans from the DeFi sector. And yeah, that's really exciting. The other another example is Fortunify. So they're an issuer that's focused on what's called revenue-based financing. So this is financing to companies, or mostly tech-enabled companies, who want to kind of get advances on their future revenue. And they are working together also with Pipe, which is a big player in the space, and they're growing very quickly. And lastly, the example I want to mention was Branch, which is a kind of emerging market micro lending fintech. So they're providing. There's a pool also live on our product that's providing, I think, about 5 or 6 million in loans right now to Branch to actually hand out in micro lending to individuals. I think mostly in India. So that's 3 very diverse, very different use cases that are all actually live right now on Ethereum and actually being used. And you can actually go to our app TinLake and actually invest in these different pools. So yeah, here just a screenshot of the entire list of pools that we have live right now. So I mentioned a few already. There's also others like the gig pool, which is providing kind of gig economy payment advances, which is really exciting and growing quickly. And Conservate, which is kind of cargo and invoice advancing. Yeah, many more. So getting back to what I was mentioning before, so these drop tokens are particularly interesting as collateral for other DeFi protocols. And we've been working on for quite a while on an integration with Maker. So we have 5 different vaults that are onboarded with the MakerDAO protocol right now, and 3 of them are actively using kind of this integration. So basically, they're able to deposit their drop tokens into a Maker vault, and they're able to draw DAI as a loan against this real world asset collateral. And I think it's quite cool to mention that like this is really a new paradigm in the way that we're really like using this off-chain real world collateral, creating on-chain tokens that represent shares of these different assets, and then drawing DAI, which is an entirely on-chain stablecoin, against these assets, and then again that DAI is then converted to USDC and then drawn down to fiat. So it's really the whole chain that's happening here. We were the first partners to work with Maker on bringing real world assets into the protocol. The other protocol that we're working with right now is we're working on launching a market on AFA as well. So this is something that if anyone has been following Centrifuge, you might have heard us about. It's in the very final stages right now of actually launching this. So basically what's going to happen is there's going to be a new market on the AFA protocol where people can invest USDC, and they'll be investing in a bunch of these different drop tokens, kind of an index fund of different drop tokens. So yeah, it's kind of offering a really exciting alternative to just investing USDC in a crypto only market, and actually getting exposure to these real world assets, which are very stable and quite interesting diversification option. So yeah, here's a little bit of a sneak peek. This is what we're working on right now, and it's going to be live very, very soon. Yeah, so that's what we've been doing. We have Tinlink live on Ethereum. We've integrated with Maker. We're very closely integrating with AFA. Besides all of that, we also have our own blockchain called Centrifuge Chain. This has been built on Substrate, which is the technology behind Polkadot. And we've been working on actually moving over more functionality to this chain. So we already managed to become a parachain on Kusama that's called Altair, and we're going to launch some functionality, some very exciting functionality on there soon. And the next step is actually to move this product that I talked about, called Tinlink, to our own chain as well. And this is really cool because like Tinlink on Ethereum, it's quite limited in its users. It's very expensive to use, like all Ethereum protocols, and it's quite limited in what we can do with it. And when we move Tinlink to our own chain, well, it will become a lot cheaper, which is makes a lot of more things possible. It will also make it a lot easier for people to launch their own pool. Right now, it's quite complex and requires a lot of work. But we actually have the vision that anyone would be able to easily create their own pool and easily bring their own real world assets into the DeFi ecosystem. And I think moving over to Centchain will be kind of the first step to achieve that. And it will also be possible to kind of customize things a lot more. We can really do whatever we want to do and whatever we can think of, honestly, on Substrate, and it's quite exciting. And the goal here really is that we become kind of a highly optimized blockchain specifically for real world asset financing, and making that possible. And then our own chain will be kind of the hub for doing a lot of this activity, for like tokenizing assets, bundling them, and so on. And then we'll actually take these LP tokens, what are called drop and tin right now, and actually move them into this kind of multi-chain universe that we're now talking about a lot this year, and actually bridge them to kind of other parachains in the Polkadot ecosystem, or bridge into Ethereum, or even bridge into other chains like Celo or whatever. On any chain that is interested in real world asset collateral, we envision that we're able to kind of take the LP tokens from our chain and move them around and really create a liquid marketplace for real world assets. That is it. That's what I wanted to talk about. I think there are a few questions in the Q&A.
Yes, there are a couple of questions, and I'll read them to you. But first of all, thank you for that great presentation. What are the chances of Centrifuge winning the next parachain auction? What's that looking like?
Yeah, we're really excited to get going, and I think it's a few more weeks for actually to start. We have. I was really happy to see with Altair we had, I think, in the second batch at least, we had the most number of like small contributors, which was really exciting to see, like a huge community support. So I hope that we're able to get that community behind us again for the next Polkadot Crowdloans.
Nice. Yeah, definitely very, very exciting things to look forward to for Centrifuge and real world assets too. And we do have some questions from the audience, so I would like to read them out to you, and perhaps you could share some insights about some of these questions. So question number 1 from Anonymous with 2 upvotes. How does Centrifuge handle privacy if real-world assets with sensitive information, such as addresses and personal identifying information, are collateralized on chain?
Yeah, that is a really good question, and exactly like one of the big problems that needs to be solved. I think I hinted at it a little bit in the beginning, where I was talking about we have an NFT that has kind of public metadata and private metadata. And this is like, I didn't dive into it because of time, but this is where kind of the solution starts. So what we do is we have some kind of public metadata that we put on chain. Like this could be the value, this could be the maturity date of the loan, this could be the debt, the current debt, and so on. But obviously, like the credit score of the borrower, that very clearly can't be public information, and there's a lot more information that that we can't put on chain. And what we actually do is we have our own peer-to-peer protocol that kind of runs separately from the blockchain that enables anyone to kind of create private documents and share them with interested parties. What this means is that kind of any of our issuers that create their own pool will put in documents that represent these assets and share this private information with investors and other parties that are involved in the pool. And then what we do is when we create these NFTs, it doesn't contain this private metadata, but it does contain kind of a verifiable link to this private metadata. So we can kind of show and we can verify that the public NFT is actually linked to this private metadata that is being shared off chain with the parties that are able to see it, but isn't actually being made public. So I think that's the way we're kind of approaching that problem.
It's nice to know that you guys are definitely thinking about that. So thank you for that answer. Next question, also from Anonymous with 2 upvotes. That's pointless to say that, honestly. But if you collateralize a house, say, does a title change owners, or how do you prevent something like a double spend, whereby an owner sells a house that is simultaneously being collateralized? Good.
Yeah, that is also a really good question. And these are definitely the big problems that need to be solved in this space. Basically, what we do right now is we, like an individual couldn't really use our protocol. The way it works is that there's always an issuer of the pool that's running the pool and that's managing it. And these are generally kind of lending businesses in the real world that specialize in a certain asset class. So for real estate, it would be Neil Silver that really does this. Like they focus on kind of providing loans against real estate. And so what they do and what their role is they when someone wants to take a loan, they approach them and they underwrite the borrower, they underwrite the asset and so on. And then when they buy the collateral in this house, they will how do I say this, like move the property rights into the legal entity. So there's always an SPV, a single purpose vehicle. I think in New Silver it would be like a US-based Delaware LLC that would own the property, and that would actually, yeah. And so when you're actually investing in a pool, you're also going through KYC and you're also signing a subscription agreement, which also gives you certain rights as an investor into this pool. And that basically gives you the right to cash flows coming from this collateral in this off-chain SPV. So that's kind of the technical answer. I would say the broader answer is really, in this case, we're also not really reinventing the wheel here. There is a very common off-chain legal infrastructure to provide financing for real estate, for example, and that is all there. Like we're not completely removing that. We have all this off-chain legal infrastructure, and there is a lot of legal agreements, but that's kind of happening separately. If you just do that, you wouldn't have any transparency on chain. And we add kind of the thin link protocol to actually make that public on chain, create a liquid marketplace out of it. But the legal infrastructure is still there. And yeah, maybe the other thing just one thing to add is that you also asked about like double spend. There is still some trust here in the issuer. Some of it is removed because they need to have some skin in the game. They need to hold some of the tin, so that junior tranche. But in the future, we also want to improve this even further by adding kind of an underwriter role to the system. So there will be kind of a third party that actually is separate from the issuer and will be verifying, in this case, that the house is possible to be used as collateral, and is it already used somewhere else.
Thank you for that answer. And then we have one more question from Mike Ankelev. What does a process for recovering funds look like in the event that a loan defaults?
Yeah, it's tying back to the same question, same answer about not reinventing the wheel entirely and using some of the things that work well. Like for real estate, for example, there's a very common, like I'm no lawyer, so I can't answer the exact details here, but there it is a fairly standardized way of handling defaults. and the issuer, in this case NewSilver, would be going through that standardized process. And the way that as like an investor you have rights is that because you're signing this agreement with the issuer, as you actually get rights to the cash flows coming from this. So in the case of a default, the issuer would be the one handling this and would be the one trying to recover the funds, and would be the one any funds that would be recovered would need to be repaid in the Tinker protocol that is kind of legally protected. Yeah.
And finally, are there any competitors doing similar real-world asset financing solutions?
Yeah, I mean, you definitely see that it's like starting to become more hyped, and there's definitely starting to become more players trying to work on this. I would say there's a lot of quite a few different ones that are kind of tokenizing real estate, for example, where they're kind of tokenizing an individual asset. So you might be able to buy like a token that represents a single house somewhere. We feel that kind of using the securitization approach makes it possible to create much more of a liquid marketplace for these assets. Rather than like investing in a single house, you need to, it's much more illiquid, and that's really what we want to avoid. And there's also some other RDBA players that are more focused on kind of under collateralized lending, based on reputation. So kind of individual loans where they're kind of trying to build like a credit profile on chain and so on, and then lend against that. But that's again quite different. Like what we're focused on is really the securitized lending for kind of highly, like it's fully collateralized, just collateralized by real world assets instead of crypto. And I think so far there's no other companies doing exactly that.
It's definitely a really cool thing that you guys are doing with the whole collateralization real world assets. So exciting things to come out of Centrifuge. Looking forward to what comes next for 2022 for your team. But thank you for your time. Thank you for participating in CSCON and giving a presentation. Really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, and have a great day, everyone.
Feel free to stick around and listen to some other talks. We got Light Clients coming up, and then Joe Lubin later, and Robert Habermeyer from Polkadot in about half an hour. So
nice, cool. I will.
Cool. See you around.